Hello and welcome to the Golden Flower podcast. Very happy to be here to have another episode with my co-host Angela, and we are going to be talking today about the intentions behind the creative process and get into, as we do in all our conversations, kind of like the deeper, more hidden aspects that can make simple things like simple intentions a little bit more complicated when we get into it. So yeah, just if you don't know, I'm Gemma. I'm a artist and I'm a creative guide for sensitive, intuitive types like myself. And I'm all about how to learn to flow with your creative journey. And I'm here with Angela.
Hello, I'm Angela Levesque. I'm a writer, digital artist, and intuitive coach. And yeah, it's been a while. We've just been traveling and doing all sorts of things. And so I'm happy to be back here today talking about this.
You know, as coaches, we know that clear intentions lead to clear action. So the clearer we can be in our intentions, the more confident we can be that we're going to find ourselves flowing in clear, sometimes we say inspired action. And also we know that as coaches, we often set intentions for every session, every conversation. We know the power of wrapping an intention around something. So we thought this might be a good one to get into because there's something about the creative journey which I find anyway, I think it might be connected to the way my mind works and a lot of the people that I work with minds work, that although we think we might be clear in our intentions, potentially we are not. And that's because we know that the creative journey is impossible to summarize in a word, a sentence, let alone a word. It's a discovery every step of the way. And with that in mind, the creative share that we like to kick off our episodes with, we had a few Elizabeth Gilberts to choose from. We went for this one, which we felt like just pointed towards she uses the word flaky, the flaky nature of creativity, but why we adore creativity so much. So I'm going to share this quote now, and this will set the tone for the link between, well, what we want to unpack, which is intentions and how that connects with our creative process, our creative journey. Creativity doesn't give a damn about your auto insurance. She just wants to dance with you and then sometimes dance away on her own schedule, on her own strange rhythms. And this is why I made a promise to my writing life when I was about 15 years old. I said to writing, I will never ask you to provide for me financially. I will always provide for you. I was willing to work hard. In other words, so that creativity could play lightly. I have seen so many beautiful creative souls murder their creative process because of this relentless insistence that they are not real artists unless their art pays the bills. And when it doesn't work out, and often it doesn't, because once more, creativity is a flaky and weird airhead goddess. And so these people become angry, bitter, stuck, bankrupted, and worst of all, they often quit creating. So let me tell you what makes you a real artist. Are you making art? If so, then you're a real artist. Elizabeth Gilbert.
Yes, I love that idea about working hard so that your creativity can play lightly, because that's what we're talking about in specifically this episode when we're diving into intention, is this idea of whether our art is our profession or whether it's part of our creative life. What is our intention for our creativity? And I think when I started out, I remember I was working with a book nurturer, and he said to me, he's like, what do you want? What is your intention for this work? And I said, well, my intention for this work is that I can do this as my, my life's work. And he tried not to laugh at me, which I, because it was very unrealistic at that point to think that, oh, I could just go and put out a book and then all of a sudden I wouldn't have to have my side hustles or whatever. And I realized that having my side hustles provided me with so much more opportunity for my creativity to flourish because I didn't have to, like she says, like I've watched so many people murder
Mm.
their creativity because they put so much pressure on it. And it's she's right, it is flaky. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's blocked, it's frustrating. And
Again, I work a lot with INF, intuitive feeling types that are very have a lot of what's the word? I don't want to say drama. I want to say just a lot of strong feeling around their creative callings. Okay. And so what I'm getting at is that often the intention can be like, I'm going to start doing this now. This is going to be something I give my energy to. And at first, the intention is just, I just have to see what can happen because, I ignored this part of myself. Now I'm making space for it. And now, I'm rallying my resources to make space for this part of myself. And there's an innocence there. There's an innocence of like, all that matters is that it happens. All that matters is that the art happens, the painting happens, the drawing happens, the writing happens. And so it happens. And then at some point there's a shift which comes along, which is, oh, I've shared this now, or we've developed. It's rightly taken form within our life. We're not going back to being someone who doesn't have their creativity as part of how they live life, whatever that looks like. It's here to stay, and it's starting to take shape. It's getting definition, and we're sharing it. And then ideas creep in that, okay, maybe I could be onto something here. Maybe this has got something beyond just that original need. Like, I just need to do this, like respond to that call. Maybe this can take me somewhere. Maybe this can get me out of the job that I don't enjoy, or just like this is more me. This is, so now I need this to be even more center stage and be even more of my existence. And then that's going to take a bit more strategy. So then our intentions have changed there. And then the pattern that comes up over and over again, I'm sure it comes up for you as well, is why after this kind of like getting on track, at some point do things get really like wading through mud and losing momentum, and confusion coming in, and starting, that bitterness starts to creep in. Like it's like those expectations that more should be happening, and time scales and different levels of achievement and support. You know where I'm going with this? Yeah, does that?
let's take a quick break and I'll respond to that when we get back. That I think it speaks to what she was saying about murdering that, because all of a sudden now that creative life, which becomes part of your sense of identity as an artist or as a writer, whatever modality you're using, now also becomes the way that you pay your bills, or you want to invite it more into your life so that then it can be your job. Because I do a lot of work with clients and we talk about like purpose, and I talk about high level purpose where you feel like you're connected to your calling. And then there's like what I would call like low level purpose where you're just, your values and your heart are in alignment with your actions.
Mm.
And so often we think that purpose has to come through the vehicle of our vocation, our work. And I think that same thing happens when, and I think that we mix things up when we do that. Like it's fantastic if you feel your purpose is fully and completely satisfied by the work that you do that pays your bills and your groceries and, takes you on vacation and all of that. But it's also incredibly, I think, depressing when it can't do that. And I think that that's because we look at it the wrong way. So purpose to me is the opportunity for and I've said this before, the expression of your essence to be moved from the inside out. And there's lots of different ways that that can happen. That can happen playing with your daughter. It can happen, with interactions with friends, the way that you show up for people in your life. Like there's all sorts of sitting down, putting, paintbrush to canvas. There's lots of different ways. And so I think it muddies things, and you use that word, and I think it's appropriate when we think that this aspect of our identity, this archetype that we might embody, has to be the way that we then take care of our other needs, our survival needs.
I mean, I was kind of thinking whether to share my experience with that, then I was thinking about how intentions work. Like I don't have an official definition of intention. For example, like, do you set intentions for your day? Do you do that kind of like today? I don't know.
Um,
For me, I often have, I'm going to be calm. And
well, I do, like I'll set intentions for a weekend or a retreat, or like if I have something special going on, but my intentions are usually quite broad. They're not very specific. Like I'm not going to say, okay, so today I'm going to sit down and write 1,000 words, and I'm not leaving until I write 1,000 words. I mean, I think that there's a difference between goals and intention. I think goals are meant to be specific, but intention is supposed to be, the way that I see it, the container in which you're um, acting from. So, like your idea of peace or your idea of calm, like you're kind of creating the conditions. It's not about being very specific. It's about what is the experience here that I'm trying to embody. And so that for me is a lot more um, general than saying, okay, my intention for today is to sit down and write 5,000 words.
mm-hmm. I like this. I knew that you were going to be good at like nailing down and helping separate out, because I feel like there's these concentric circles. Like you say, you've got goals, you've got desires, kind of hopes go with desires, and intention. And they are kind of linked, but they're very separate. And yeah, so when I set the intention to be calm when I'm, on day 3 of full-time toddler life, I don't write a list of actions that will help me achieve that. I don't know, well, do I know when I've achieved it? But it is like a navigation tool for the day. It brings to my awareness, like when I get the opportunity to sit, for 5 minutes on my own, like take it, because or make sure I'm drinking enough water, like all these things. Like I'm more likely to choose things that will give me an opportunity to stay on track with the intention that I'm staying centered and calm no matter what happens. So when it comes to an intention, so thinking about how things get, it feels like it is like a contamination. It feels to me like when we start asking a lot out of our creative life, but at the same time, I a lot of people do make it work, right? So it feels like intentions have this alignment with values. And I think that things get muddied because when survival needs get intertwined here, then we can find ourselves maybe taking actions or doing things that is not so, they're not so much in alignment with our values. I'm trying to think of an example of that. Like,
Well, I think that that's the essence of audience capture,
right.
right?
So,
Is so you say you put something out, and for some reason, and this is a really important part that I'll come back to that in a second, but like whether you're reading Rick Rubin's The Creative Act or um, the excerpt we wrote today or you read today was from Big Magic, and they both talk about like once you've created something, you no longer have control about how it's received, right? You don't know have control over how it's perceived or how it's read, but you also don't have control over the conditions from which it was released. So Rick Rubin talks about like you could put out this fantastic album, but say there was something going on in the world, maybe, you know, where uh, a war or something or some big news thing that happens, and all of a sudden you have this beautiful, amazing creative project that then doesn't get the exposure or isn't received the way that it should be received because of things that are completely out of your control. And so what happens, I think, going back to this idea of audience capture, is that you write something and for some reason, like Elizabeth Gilbert talks about Eat, Pray, Love. Like she had written a ton of stuff before that. And for some reason, everything just fell into alignment and it became this like international success, right? And so what happens is, I think if you don't have that alignment within, is that then you start guessing what other people will want. Like, you know, this is a song that all of a sudden will become a blockbuster, or this is the, you know, the pattern or whatever that will make the next bestseller. And so you start trying to change this expression of who you are based on a perception or based on these ideas of what you think your audience wants to hear next from you. And I think that that's where you start to lose your way. Like it's not an exact quote, but another thing Elizabeth Gilbert said is like, I'm way more interested nowadays in authenticity than originality, because when people are in that alignment, when they understand what their intention is, when they write from a place where they let their, you know, the expression of what's inside come out of them, that is where people resonate. But when you start to guess, when you start to look at somebody and say, oh, I think this is what they're looking for now, let me create something with that idea in mind, people can read that. Like people can feel that that doesn't feel authentic, and it's that resonance, it's that almost um something that like you can't quite articulate. There's that feeling that you're like, oh, that's the connection I'm making to it. And I don't think that that happens if you're trying to perceive what your audience is looking for. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
really makes sense. So I was really enjoying listening. You were speaking to this idea of containment and being able to hold oneself within the creative process. And what that says to me is that the intention forms a kind of boundary or a container that, like, when you know for yourself why you're doing things, then you are releasing the outcome and you're not needing things from the outer. And that really frees people up to because there's something people can sense when there's a need, an unmet need, and it can be hard. It's like the magnet. It can push people away, like the very thing that you want, like the engagement, the sales, or whatever. Like because of this this need that you're kind of not aware of, because you know maybe you're pushing yourself, like you say, to go in this direction that you think will get better results, and it's knocked you out of your center, and you're kind of more vulnerable like that, and you can get into these cycles of feeling like things are going off track. Whereas it can just be as simple, like I shared with you, I had this experience at the weekend, right, with the small showcase of paintings and doing some live painting. So painting like a demonstration, so not inside where the paintings were, but like in the street. And so passers-by and near where some cafes and people were eating and setting up and doing a live demo of some painting. So I know that I found the whole experience like quite like straightforward, which for me is quite unusual. And I think it was because I just really did feel that intention very genuinely was that there was an opportunity to paint, and that I was a beautiful sunny day, a lot of support around me, my daughter with me, everything painting. I didn't ask for anything else out of that experience, and it really freed me. I was just like, I'm here for this moment. I'm showing up for the painting process because it's rare for me. I don't really get the opportunities the way that I used to. And so even though in a way I was outside of my comfort zone, it's not something that I'd done before. And, historically I've had a lot of issues around like feeling overexposed or vulnerable in the sharing of work and the sharing of my creative process that didn't really show up in that way. And I do remember, like, I think I had a conversation with a friend the night before. We were leaving voice notes, and I don't think she said, "Oh, what's your intention?" But I remember saying something like, "I really just can't wait to get the paintbrush in my hand and see what happens." So I don't know if that's kind of relevant, but in a way it is, because I can see how that formed like a, not like I needed a protective barrier, but that word complete, there was something like self-contained and complete about it. So yeah, I think.
Have you ever read A Course in Miracles?
Have I read it? Yes, I have read it. Yes, yes.
So anyway, yesterday I was walking my dog and I was listening to Marianne Williamson, her book Return to Love, which she wrote based on the principles of A Course in Miracles, and she talks about um, the way that the Course in Miracles interacts with like your life's purpose and the way that you make money and that sort of thing. And she was talking about what we're saying about how we create this intention, but we need to leave the details, and in her words, leave the details to God, right? And she said, so if you're a painter, paint. If you're a teacher, you teach. If do whatever it makes your heart sing, like whatever makes your heart sing, go out and do that. And even if it's only for two people or a room full of people, or you know what I mean, like what you're doing by connecting yourself with that which makes your heart sing, that's what you attract more of that into your life just by kind of the magnetism, the way that things, the way that the universe works and brings things to you. So I love listening to you talk about that. Like just you're you connect with the archetype of an artist. And so having the opportunity to go out and just paint and like set your intention that you just from this place of joy, from this opportunity, looking at it as a pure opportunity to do something that you love, that sets the stage for something I think really magical and beautiful to happen. And also, I believe, creates more opportunities like that, will create more opportunities like that for you in the future, just by the nature of like living in a world that operates from like attracting like, right? From this like magnetism and pulling that stuff into your orbit just from the nature of you being um, so happy about that opportunity. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you. And it kind of also shows me why it's so difficult when, I'm fortunate at this time that there aren't really expectations on me, it's kind of like a good, what do I mean? Like a good stage. I can, having experienced how easy it is, I can also know how difficult it is when there are expectations, when there are people waiting for things from you. It's much harder to maintain, but it's even more important to maintain that. Um, have you had the experience of having pressure on you to like deliver something, or do you feel like you've done a good job of avoiding that? Because I think in a way that is part of the art of the creative process, perhaps, is to avoid being in situations where you're gonna, I don't know, is it though? I don't know. No, because
Well,
you're gonna have that come up. That's part of
I
it.
Well, I have two different, like, so for example, I've talked before, my side hustle is building websites for people.
Yeah.
And I like building websites because it allows me to be creative. It also allows me to be very organized and put things together and problem solve and do all of those other things that I really quite enjoy. So I liked having that as a side hustle because it did allow the opportunity for some of that, you know, my essence to be expressed and the opportunity to create things. And of course, I have to make it in alignment with the voice of their organization, right? So I can't just decide, oh, I think this looks beautiful, let's do this, without paying attention to, okay, what is your company, what do you offer, what is your, like, let's look at how you branded yourself,
Mhm.
how do we create something that speaks to your values and all of those things, your mission, vision, that kind of stuff. So that for me was a really fun way to kind of bridge that. I've also had it where people have asked me to create sacred geometry animations for their specific work. And that put a lot more pressure on, because that up until that point, it was just a purely artistic expression for me. So I could say, okay, I feel like working with the flower of life, and I'm going to create this, and I want to, have this evolution of this moving meditation. But doing it for somebody else, that put a lot of pressure, and I actually didn't like that as much. It was a really, really big, big, big project, so I kind of bit off more than I could chew at that point. But yeah, it did change. It took some of the love out of that process of creating those animations, because of the time crunch, because of the pressure, because of, you know, you get more involved in it because these are things that you create, but then they want it changed. And there were specific reasons that you created that way that were embed, like the intention was embedded in that, but they had a different vision. So yeah, I've had the experience of both. And I kind of like being able to create my sacred geometry animations, um, just as my art. And
Mm.
it's the same sort of thing like when you hear musicians talk about writing songs for their audience. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, I connect, like, write the songs for you, write them because they're connected. Again, it goes back to that resonance, it goes back to that alignment. Like, I'm going to feel what you put into that. And if I've had the same feelings, that's where that connection is. Whereas you write something just for me, uh, it doesn't have that same soul to it, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it would kind of figure that I wouldn't enjoy doing commissions for people, right? Because of that expectation. But I actually really love it. And I've never really had any anxiety about it. And I'm just sat here thinking, so why is that? What is it that I'm trying to locate what makes it feel really safe for me to do the commission? And all that's coming up for me is that I just kind of maybe it's just because I own and communicate that I can only paint the way that I paint. And and that I don't have a lot of control over it. So I'm going to go in and do the same thing that I always do. And that's going to be that. Like I've never had the experience of ever having to adjust something, or I can imagine then getting a bit lost, like trying to second guess. Like I think I'd struggle with like feedback, and I haven't
I
really
think
had
those
too much.
are two separate things though. So if I hire you as an artist to do what
Mm-hmm.
you do as an artist, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's fantastic. So that to me, having somebody commission you to do a painting, they're kind of saying, I love and respect you as an artist and the work that you do. I'd like to have like a Gemma original and put it up on my wall. But
Yeah.
anytime that you're now interacting with somebody else's vision, mission, values, you know what I mean? Like you're creating it for to fit into their container. I think that's where it becomes a little bit difficult because then you now have to take the stuff that is the essence of who you are and it now starts to become manipulated in order to fit somebody else's um, whatever their vision. And I
Mm.
think that that's okay, as long as that's okay, for you and how you work. And like when I write, there's lots of times where I've done some like marketing, branding, website stuff for people, and I've told them my opinion, and I disagree with what what they're doing. And but that's not what that ultimately that's not the direction they want to go, and I make it how they want it to go. But I do kind of give my feedback, but ultimately it has to be, I'm creating something specifically for them, so it has to be in alignment with what they want.
Mm. Yeah, it's all coming down to that the clarity that can come from self-reflective processes, honing in on questions to separate out when things are getting foggy. I can think of people in a situation where, they're building up their portfolio, but perhaps they have an agent that has a vested interest in the next pieces of work that go in the portfolio, that go on their website, that they have a specific client base. And yet the artist on the other end of that is struggling to like keep in contact with that original expression, and to separate out from um that expectation that they're going to produce a certain kind of work. Yeah, there's no real easy answers here. I think what comes to mind is perhaps we need sometimes to separate out in our thinking, but also maybe give ourselves make sure that we always have opportunities to make work, which is, we know 100 in that situation. For example, I would say, well, I need to make work, have the space and resources to keep making work that I know is not for anyone else's eyes, so that I keep that part of me alive. And then when I'm switching gear, to have that be really conscious. I'm switching gear. This is for me, and this is also for me, but it has a different element in it. But I can see that that's really tricky.
So maybe the moral of this this story is, um if you are making money off of your art, making sure that it still feels good to you. And I think the bigger that you get and the more people that become dependent on your ability to create that, I think the more muddied it does get. So I don't know. I think it's up to each person deciding if they want to put that level of pressure. Um, as I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talk about like the survival stuff, the food, clothing, shelter, and a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, like creative expression and creative journey, goes higher up on the hierarchy of needs. And so I think, can you keep that pure intention? Can you keep your connection to the essence of yourself and the expression of that, and still take care of, your more basic needs? And if you can, I think that that's great. And I think for a lot of people, that's wonderful.
Mm.
But if you can't, I think that that's great too. Like, as long as there's a piece of you, there's stuff in your life that still allows you to participate in the creative journey. Um,
Mm.
you don't have to make money off your art to be an artist. You don't have to, publish a bestseller to be a writer. I think it's an expression of who we are, and sometimes it serves us, and it works well to make money off of it, and sometimes it serves us better to not put that pressure on it.
Right. So if you enjoy painting, paint, and if you enjoy drawing, drawing, and if you enjoy writing, write. It sounds so simple, but I think when you just said those simple words, which was, if it feels good, then okay. But if it doesn't feel good, then it seems like what's happening is we're getting what, the drawing, the writing is not for the drawing and the writing, it's for what we get on the other side. And then it's a job, it's a means to an end. It's like we want the result and not the experience. We want the result. We want the idea of whatever that will give us on the other side. And that's not a pure intention. And therefore that's the muddying. right there. So yeah, the simplest check-in is, we had a bunch of questions, but I think probably can be summarized with we want to drill into, does it still feel good? I had that I sometimes, because I even though I love painting so much, I sometimes toy with the idea, like, do I still enjoy this as much as my identity is wrapped around this? Like, there's been times that I've been playing with this idea, and there's been a few times over the last year or so where I haven't found myself in a flow state with paint. It's kind of rare, but I think what's important is that I feel like if I don't, like, I'm not afraid of like finding out like paint's not the thing anymore. It has been for a while, but I'm quite open to it not being. I think that's really important. But yeah, where am I not enjoying? Yeah, so thinking to the conversations that I had over the last few months that led to this deeper dive into in the importance of intention, and how it gets muddied. I think we've come to the nub, which is kind of cool, which is it gets muddied when it doesn't feel good for whatever reason. We're no longer in it for the simple, we're in it for reasons that are more convoluted, and that's what's making the whole process go off track. It sounds so simple now, but I think when you're in it and the subtle ways that we can find our way ourselves in those places, um, it doesn't it's not like a overnight thing. It's like lots of little choices and pressures, and it's about pressure. We touched on, survival, when we were asking our creativity to pay bills. It's no joke, right? Because and survival needs distorts our thinking. It creates a distortion which ripples out and echoes through the whole process. And yeah, I've
I just I just had
totally
something drop in.
yeah, good.
Maybe we feel that pressure to make our art, pay our bills because of that question. Hey, what do you do?
Mm,
Like you go, and that's the question. And as inane as I think that question is, we go around, and that's one of the first things when you meet somebody new. And it's like, what do you do? And you want to be able to say, if I say I'm a writer, oh, have I read anything that you've written? Oh, I'm an artist. Oh, do you have an exhibit somewhere? It's like maybe that's the crux of it, is that we identify with our creative life, we identify with these creative modalities that we use, but unless we can say, hey, yeah, I'm a writer and here's my proof, maybe that's where that disconnect is. And that's why we feel so much pressure to like try and make our art be the thing that makes money for us, so that there's no disconnect between other people's idea of who we are and our idea of ourselves.
yeah. Yeah, you're touching on something really deep here, which I kind of want to do a whole episode on something else that I've noticed that I know is very true in my life, which is, a young age, um, being very impressionable by very creative people, musicians and artists, and that coinciding with wounding and making unconscious decisions that the way to compensate for that wound and that very big, all-encompassing impression of, you know, like you're a young teenager, you're having excruciating not enoughness, and then in your survival, in a kind of psychic survival way, we attach to the PJ Harveys of this world and the I don't know, the films, the music, that whatever, and they fill that gap. And I don't think it's a surprise that later in our adult life, when we have that reclamation journey, we've lost a part of ourselves and we're not pursuing our creative calling, we come back and there is still the remnants of that original like wound and that kind of insertion of like the remedy of like this this is the answer. But these are decisions that we make at a time where we're not even like properly fully developed. So yeah, this distortion and overwhelming impressions that we have, I think, is a big part of why in our adult life we I know it's been true for me, right? I know that I've had an equation somewhere along the line that, you know, the way out of this pain is to have expression on the level of people that I've really admired in some form or another, and that at least even if I don't get there, just moving towards that is some kind of answer. So I feel like this touches on, you know, we talked about survival in terms of like, oh, now I'm in a bit of a groove with my artistic talent and capability, and now I think I want to try and make a living out of it. But I think where we're ending this episode is that it goes a lot deeper in terms of identity. There is a root to that distortion that is still playing out, that is really hard to get to the nub of and the root of. But I think it's incredibly liberating to get to the root of that original kind of trade that we did, which is it's still trading ourselves and our true essence for something that is very powerful and very beautiful and all kinds of things. But at the same time, it sets off an infinite chain of thoughts, choices, and actions, which in my own life and in my experience, it's the ultimate thing is like, you know, when you can get to that level of dis discovery and roots and then still choose what you're choosing, it's on a different level because you've taken that raw survival pain place out of the equation. And that's how you find yourself in a, you know, when you can make what we talk, when you can be at that level of self-containment and completeness, when you do know, when you have that clarity of intention, because that's that original distortion has found a way out of your system. But it's not easy. It's really not easy because it's buried so deeply. Like if you start in, you know, the courage that it takes to have those conversations, because they challenge our notions of identity at such a raw place that's beyond just, you know, liking the idea of being an illustrator or a writer. It's so, anyway, I've kind of made my point. It's deep.
Well, I think we have to wrap this up because we're running long, but when we get back, we'll go through. I think this is an excellent segue to this week's creative challenge.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, you were just talking about kind of revisiting where some of our original intentions came from, how they were developed, and that sort of thing. And I think that this week's creative challenge assists us in kind of getting at the core of some of that. So I'll let you
Mm.
describe it.
We have a theme going in our creative challenges, which is uh, the the incisive question, that we're choosing questions that cut through and help us get to the more unconscious, unknown, hidden elements. It's, you know, I feel like for me, for sure, I need a level of revelation, like ongoingly, to feel like I'm really in contact with um again just to, you know, the creative journey being this archetypal becomingness. For me to unearth that, I this thousands of questions. And as a coach, you come across so many. And then what I'm doing more and more these days is creating like an archive of the questions that are like, oof. And some of them are really simple, as the best questions are. So here's a selection of profound, hard hitting, in my opinion. You might think they're not, um, questions to get into that deep reflective space, because questions that will bring up where you are in terms of things like your current values, and then you ask questions when that stuff is lively, you're going to get more, you're going to get closer to the awareness that's going to serve you for where you're at. So starting with, what do you love? Who do you love? What do you stand for? What's your foundation? So these are journal questions. Normally we offer a kind of time parameter. I think that's always helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Three minutes, I think, is a good one. 3 minutes for what do you love? Another 3 minutes for who do you love? Another 3 minutes for what do you stand for? What's your foundation? And from there, in relation to this episode, what are my intentions for my creative life? And as an extension journal question, where am I confusing my intentions with expectations and hopes? So how does that land as a challenge for you?
I think that's great. I might add one more question. Um, are my goals in alignment with my intentions? But yeah, I think that this is a great journaling exercise and will help people to explore a little bit, especially if they're playing with that idea about their creative identities and what is their intention for their, the stuff that they create. What are they ultimately, what are they trying to get out of it? And I think these questions help lay the foundation for that.
Mm. Can I, while we're still on air, on
Yeah.
air, can I bounce my understanding of your question, like as an example, so that I feel like I can get the most out of it? So the question was, where's my intention out of alignment with my goal?
Yeah.
Is that,
Like, where
yeah.
are your goals in alignment with your intention?
Yeah, that so for example, if going with my intention to be a calm and centered mama, if my goal is, I don't know, let's say that we want to put out 2 more episodes, it would be a case of checking in, like, how do those goals look alongside my intention to be like, okay, that might be a goal that I want for various reasons, like it's gonna boost audience, boost this, boost that, and that's like my entrepreneurship hat. But if my intention is to be, I don't know, am I merging things there, or is that the kind of is
No,
that
I
the kind
mean, so if your intention is having a sense of calm, are
of
your
Mhm.
goals in alignment with that? Are you putting too much expectation on yourself? Like, are you trying to, uh, you only have a certain amount of time to get this done, but yet your goals are so large that there's no way that you could possibly fit it into the allotment of time that you have? That's
Mhm.
going to that's going to take you out of your intention, because you're not going to be able to maintain that certain level of calm if you have put way too much stuff on your plate. I know for
Right.
myself, that's one of my biggest stress triggers, is when I don't feel I have enough time to accomplish the stuff that I want to do. So I always make sure, like, for example, that I give myself enough time to get somewhere so I'm punctual, because that's important to me. So I think that it's it's looking at, okay, so this is the experience that I want. Are my goals in alignment with that experience? And if that experience is calm, how do you then accomplish your goals in a way that allows you to continue that experience?
Mm, nice. All right, so some more transformative journaling coming our way, Angela. So, okay, good. I'll enjoy that. Enjoyed talking with you, and I knew it would be great to unpack unpack these topics with you is the kind of area where, I don't know, I feel like a few things have landed, you know?
Yeah. That is our episode for you today. If you want to know more about Gemma, you can go to GemmaKaufman.com. You can find her Etsy shop at Gemma Kaufman Art. If you want to know more about myself, you can go to chaosandlight.com and also follow me on Substack at Chaos and Light. We have our YouTube channel that we put up our episodes, and Gemma has been doing some short videos as well at The Golden Flower on YouTube. And yeah, so that's it. Follow the aliveness, nurture that spark, and we will be back next week. Thanks for
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you.